Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. And this is the fourth part of our comprehensive look at Warhammer Quest. And we are finally past the base game, and now we're moving on to the big box expansions, of which there were two. Lair of the Orc Lord and the Catacombs of Terror. Now in the White Dwarf issue, when they announced Lair of the Orc Lord, which was the first of the expansions, they said that this would be the first in a series. So the series only ended up being two. I have a feeling that they had a third plan, and that would be a Skaven boxed set of adventures. And the reason I think that is because one of the more comprehensive expansions released in the White Dwarf issues is a Skaven one, and it's very extensive. So I have a feeling that they had a box set plan for that, but then they ended up scrapping it. Maybe because sales weren't as good as what they were hoping for, or it also could just be that Games Workshop is kind of notoriously bad at supporting their specialty boxed games for very long. They're kind of in and out with these things. Sometimes, most of the time actually, they don't really expand on their specialty box games at all. What you get is you get the base set and that's it. So I guess we're kind of lucky that we got as much out of Warhammer Quest as we did, because it might be their most expanded specialty game. I think it is. I'm trying to think of something else that maybe had as much. I guess Talisman. Talisman had quite a bit, especially 4th edition Talisman, but that was co-published by Fantasy Flight. So maybe this might be actually their most expanded game. However, let's take a look at Lair of the Orc Lord in this video. And first we're going to just take a look at the components. Let's see what we got. So you did get a few map tiles. Now what's interesting is you got a Flames of Kozla official map tile and an official Collapsed Corridor map tile. Now both of these were also released in White Dwarf issues, but they were on very thin cardstock, and you would kind of have to attach it to another board. So with this expansion, you did get official nice thick cardboard versions of these two tiles. Okay, and then you've got a Shaman's Den tile. So this was a special dungeon room that had some special rules with it. Really, really nice art on this. Again, the pictures don't really do the art justice on these cards. These tiles. They have a really nice 3D quality to it. Nice shading, nice shadows. And then you got the large objective room. So this is where all of your orc adventures would end. And just like in the other base game, or in the base game with the other objective rooms, there are 6 random adventures associated with this. And this was Gorgut's Lair. So on top of the cards, probably the main draw was the minis. So here is Gorgut, the war boss of the orcs. This is the main boss here. Someday I will paint him. Famous last words. Really nice mini. So unlike the base game, which came with plastic minis, the minis in the expansions are all metal. Really nice. Very nice. Chunky, heavy duty, great detail. And you also kind of had another little mini boss guy, and that was Scabnose, the orc shaman. This guy, when I got him, he was a little painted, so I've been kind of stripping away at the paint. He wasn't very well painted, so I wanted to redo him. And then you got 3 orc biggins. So these are kind of like a little bit slightly more powerful orcs that you would face. 2 different poses slightly. Really neat facial details. Again, these old Citadel minis, they had such neat expressive faces. Far more cartoony than most of the things you see now. Okay, and then you got a special squid hound with those giant teeth. Big old mohawk. And then this little guy, Bogoff the Snotling, he would actually come and he would steal the lantern from the heroes and run off with it. So you'd have to try to catch him to get your lantern back. Not looking forward to painting this guy. He's tiny. And then you've got Gubbins the Goblin Jester here. Again, look at that face. Just really, really neat. Very expressive. The sculptors that Citadel had were fantastic. I like their new minis a lot too. I love the Age of Sigmar minis. They're very, very well detailed and great sculpts, but they're not as chunky and as expressive as these old Citadels. Okay, then we also got a stack of cards to use for these adventures, or you could just combine everything. I like to keep them separate, so just in case you want to have more orc-themed adventures. So the first little group of cards here are just information cards. You have information about Scabnose's spell, so he's the shaman, and he's got a few different spells he can cast. You've got this powerful sword, the Sword of Malediction. The Sword of Malediction can be won in a single combat against Skullbasha, the Orc Biggin. This mighty blade is enchanted with powerful counter magic, which sucks the magical energy from other magic items. So then that has some special rules associated with it. And then you had a special card here for the Squig Hound with his stats, or her stats, I guess. And some special rules. Growler the Squig Hound belongs to Gubbins and will turn up to avenge the death of its master. In the first monster's phase after Gubbins is killed, a terrible growling is heard, rising to a howl as the warrior who killed Gubbins is immediately attacked by a growling mass of gnashing fang and legs. And then a little card for the Shaman's Den tile, which gives you some special rules to use with that tile. And then you also got some treasure, a few little treasure cards here. And these treasures are more orc-based. The Ring of Life, the Hammer of Hargon. You find a sturdy dwarf hammer with an ornate icon carved in its head. Any dwarf in the party recognizes this as the lost Hammer of Hargon. When using this hammer, you may roll as many dice for damage as you like. Add up the total, then add your strength to the final score. However, if any of the dice come up 1 or 2, the hammer causes no damage at all. So kind of a pressure luck element with dealing damage. I like that a lot. Magic errors, or as humans say, arrows. Fungus brew. Some pretty stones. Bogrot's crown. The warriors find a grubby-looking circlet of rusted iron. Faded runes are inscripted on its pitted surface. This magic crown adds +1 to the wearer's toughness. It can be worn at the same time as a helmet. That's pretty nice. Plurgit Stabba. A stabba is a little, like a goblin dagger. That's what they call their daggers. And the Scroll of Chimera. The warriors find a dusty old scroll lying in a dark corner. When unrolled, words of power grow dully on the ancient parchment. Okay. And then finally, you have your orc-based events. And so you could use this as the sole event deck for any of your orc adventures. Or you could also, just like in the roleplay book for the base set, you could come to this book here and use some of the events and encounters from this book. So this was a mixture of combat and non-combat encounters. So you could discover a wounded knight, a map. There are spike traps. You have Gorgut, the orc boss and his minions. A trip up, one of the warriors trips on a loose flagstone. The flagstone is actually part of a clever mechanism. Take a warrior counter to see who trips up. And then something bad happens, of course. Okay, Goblin Wolf Riders, Goblin Archers, and Fanatics. I love Goblin Fanatics. They're really cool. They're swinging their ball and chains around, trying to hit everything in sight. Get the Little Git, Falling Rocks, a Spore Fungus, Scabnose the Shaman with minions. So he has some special rules there. Scabnose has a bodyguard of minions. See the reference sheet. He stays back from fighting and casts spells. See the Scabnose spells special card. He also has a magic ring. Squig Hunters with cave squigs. Black Orcs. So these were like the really big, nasty orcs that you could fight. So if you look at the big ones, so these were like kind of like the medium-sized orcs. They have 5 wounds. The Black Orcs 7. So yeah, these guys are pretty tough. Definitely don't want to mess with them. Black Orcs are bigger and tougher than normal orcs. They wear armor that increases their toughness by 1. And there's the Fanatics. I only have 3 of those models, but I think the most you ever encounter is 3. Or maybe I have 4. Actually, I have 4 because I bought a pack of 3, and then 1 comes with the 3rd edition of Talisman, so I have that guy as well. There's a little Bogoth the Snotling. And then 1d6 Wild Cave Squigs. So that's all the components you got. You do get a few little tokens to represent some debris and stuff in the dungeon. So not a ton of stuff in the game. However, the book itself adds quite a bit. So the cover was done by Dave Gallagher. And he actually did most of the covers for, I think, most of the White Dwarf issues that were published during the Warhammer Quest years. His art is really cool. I don't know if I particularly love this cover. I don't think it's some of the best of David Gallagher's work, but it's still really nice, very colorful. And then on the inside art, there's also art by John Blanche and Wayne England and Mark Gibbons. I'm not familiar much with England and Gibbons. A little bit. That's not true. I think England is the one I'm least familiar with. John Blanche, I absolutely love his art. I would love to get a copy of his art book. I think it's called Rat Spike, but it is super expensive, super out of print and rare. It goes for like $300, $400 on Amazon. I would even like just to get a PDF of it so I could print out some of the art. But the book starts off with a really nice little bit of flavor text, a little short story here with some introduction about what you're going to get and the contents. So yeah, so the counters, they're all mixed in with my other counters, were a Fallen Block Corridor, 3 netted counters, and 2 Pit of Despair counters. You get 36 cards, and then the floor plans, the Citadel minis that we've already gone over. And then section 1, it tells you kind of how to set up your orc adventures. If you wanted to just mix everything together, you could do a big dungeon bash, or you could keep things separate and have more orc-themed adventures, which is what I like to do. Sometimes in games where you have a lot of expansions, the more expansions you mix, the more watered down the experience becomes. So in something like Arkham Horror, that has a ton of cards, sometimes it's better to not mix everything together, so that way you're more apt to have something thematic happen. But then also sometimes it's fun just to have a bunch of random chaos going on. So again, more flavor text. Like I said earlier, these Games Workshop, their rule books are always filled with so much cool background and so much flavor. You have night goblins, you have the orc stuff. This gives you all of your really, really good detail and background on the special characters that come with this campaign, with this expansion, their abilities, their spells, their stats, what minions they have. So like you have your minion tables, stuff about the Jester, his special rules, Growler the Squighound, its special rules. And then we get to the adventures. So if you drew the objective card for Gorgut, Gorgut's Lair, you would come to this book to figure out your objective room, so the monsters you would have to fight to solve your quest. And then you would roll a d6 and you would pick your adventure. And this also has some special rules for Gorgut's Lair and the Shaman's Den. And so the adventures were called Stop the War, Atonement, Impossible, Hound for a Hound. Oh, we skipped number 3. The Magnificent Four, and Stolen Goods. So you also had your Orc Events table, which was a 2d6 roll, so 2 through 12, to give you a few more special events and random encounters that could happen within your Orcish dungeons. And then additionally, we come to the Orc treasure tables. So these would add all kinds of treasures that were more Orc themed, like Grolmuck's Axe, Kill Crazy Total Brew, Dead Ard Weapon. So I think the orcs in Warhammer Fantasy, they kind of had Cockney accents, I think. Then you had magic armor, the armor of Gork, the armor of Margit, Gork's big belt, Mork's id. And then you had orc magic items, orc magic weapons. And then you get to the orc monster table. So tons of greenskins that you can face here. Every time I say greenskins, it sounds so racist, doesn't it? So this module, this expansion, was really made for heroes levels 1 through 5. And it was kind of meant to follow up directly after the events that came with the base game, with the roleplay book, the Dungeon Master's run adventure in that game. So you had levels 2 through 3 orc monster tables with some special rules for the squig hoppers, and then levels 4 through 5. And then you get to the final section, which is section 3, and that's a little bit about game mastering and how to run adventures a little better. And then you get to the adventure that does actually follow up directly after the adventure in the base game, or the campaign in the base game, and that's the Doom of Grishnak. So you have some more special rules for the game masters. And then you get to how to introduce the warriors to the adventure. There's a couple different ways, a couple different adventure hooks to get them in. And then we come to our deeps. So there are 3 deeps again, 3 levels to this adventure. Deep 1 is the Den of Doom. Have all of your special room write-ups. Then you get to Deep 2, which is Scabnose Strikes Back. And there's your map for Deep 2. And then finally, Deep 3, To the Death. The Doom of Grishnak, Deep 3, To the Depth. So if somebody has ever come up with a cool way of running these GM-led adventures for solo or co-op, let me know. I mean, I guess it's pretty easy to do. You just try not to read ahead as much as possible, try not to read ahead and keep as much surprises as you can. Or I guess just have one player kind of run it and play at the same time, just so that player doesn't make any of the decisions. Because some of these GM-led adventures are actually really cool, and they have a lot of flavor text and a lot of things to discover that you can't really do in the random dungeon mode. Cool. cool little picture of a goblin fanatic. I used to love drawing these guys in high school, even though I didn't play much Warhammer Fantasy in high school. I knew about these guys and I would see them in magazines and stuff, and I just liked drawing them. They were fun, especially with just those giant chain and balls and chain. Super cool. Then you got some handouts that you could photocopy and you could cut out and give to the players for special things they could find, or little letters, or just things to add to the adventure. Some rules on some new monsters here. So you have a little a chart here that has all your night goblin stuff. So I don't have a lot of night goblin minis. I would just kind of probably proxy whichever ones I have for the different ones. I do have a shaman, and I have some regular night goblins, some night goblin archers, and some of the net guys. Had a little dog episode at the door. Then delivery man came. So anyways, yeah, so night goblins, and then finally the back cover was just like a random, or not random, but a reference sheet for some of the information. So yeah, so that is Lair of the Orc Lord. And unfortunately, I do not have the box for this expansion. I bought both of the expansions from the same guy, a local guy here. And he had the box for the Catacombs of Terror, but not for the Lair of the Orc Lord. And it's pretty funny. I thought I wouldn't care, but now I actually kind of want the box. Just for collecting reasons, I guess. So every once in a while I'll go on eBay and look to see if I can find a box, and no luck yet. So it's not that big of a deal. I don't even keep the boxes on my shelf. I keep them packed away. But yeah, this is pretty cool. I think I like the Catacombs of Terror better. And we'll go over most of the reasons why at a different time. But I think it's mainly because I like undead more than I like orcs. Or the orcs are pretty cool, but they're also kind of, I don't know. I guess they're both pretty stereotypical fantasy adversaries. But I just enjoy the theme of undead and tombs more than I do orcs. But this is a good expansion. You get a lot of stuff in here. A lot of cool minis. Good amount of cards. And a lot of fun. So, all right. Well, hope you guys enjoyed this video. On the next one, we will take a look at the Catacombs of Terror. Bye-bye.